There are things on the internet that should stay buried, but some stories just refuse to die. This is LurmoStories, where we dig into the web's darkest corners to find what was left behind. What we uncover tonight could change everything. I don't usually post on X, but I need someone to tell me I'm not losing it. Last night, I was lurking like always, half awake, scrolling through threads while the apartment was dead quiet. It was one of those nights where the highway outside sounds far away, like the whole city is holding its breath. I clicked through the catalog, not even sure what I was looking for, just avoiding sleep. There was a thread near the bottom with a timestamp from 2 minutes earlier. The title wasn't anything special. Anyone else being watched while browsing? I opened it because paranoid stuff is usually good for a laugh. The OP was a single image, some grainy screenshot of what looked like a desktop with a text doc open. Nothing unusual until I actually looked at the text. The first line was my username. Not my trip code, not some common alias, the exact disposable handle I only use when I'm posting on a tiny retro gaming board. The document listed things I'd posted over the past week, word for word. Stuff I wrote half drunk at 2 in the morning, joking about old shareware games and broken controllers. Nothing personal, nothing serious. But it was arranged like someone had been collecting it, cataloging it. Then the last line hit me harder than anything else. He refreshes the catalog at 1:28 a.m. The timestamp on the thread? 1:28 a.m. At first I figured someone was screwing around, maybe scraping posts from random users. But nobody should have known when I was browsing at that exact second. I wasn't posting, wasn't replying, just scrolling. And that handle wasn't linked to anything else. There was one reply under the OP, just one. A single sentence. He's reading it now. My apartment felt suddenly smaller, like someone else was in the room. The glow from the monitor made everything look warped, stretched. I checked the blinds even though I live on the 3rd floor. I minimized the window just to get the thread off my screen. And when I reopened the catalog, the post was gone. Not deleted, gone like it never existed. I checked my browser history. It showed every thread except that one. I tried reloading multiple times, even switching to my phone. Nothing. No cached version, no ghost thread, no archival bot picking it up. Then, about 5 minutes later, I got a notification. I don't even know how to explain this part. It wasn't from the board. It wasn't from any app I have installed. It was just a blank pop-up in the corner of the screen with a single line of text. Don't back out. That's when I realized the notification didn't fade like normal ones. It stayed there, fixed, like it was waiting for something. And while I stared at it, another message appeared beneath it. Part 2 starts when you open the thread again. I didn't open anything right away. I just sat there, waiting to see if another message would pop up. But the screen stayed still. The apartment felt wrong, too quiet, too heavy, like the air thickened around me. I finally reached for the mouse, hands shaking more from anger than fear. I wasn't about to let some creep push me around on my own computer. When I clicked the catalog, everything looked normal. Same threads, same bait, same arguments. Nothing out of place. I scrolled down, forcing myself to breathe normally, reminding myself it had to be some elaborate troll. But then a new thread blinked into view, even though I'd refreshed just seconds earlier. Title: You came back late. OP image: a blurry photo of an apartment window. My apartment window. Not the full thing, just the corner of it, angled from somewhere across the parking lot. One of those shots where you recognize the shape before your brain even processes it. Same old air conditioner unit, same peeling white paint on the sill, and a faint reflection of my monitor's light inside the glass. The text under the image said, "You left at 1:33, returned at 1:41. Why pretend otherwise?" I hadn't left my apartment at all, not even to grab the mail. I hadn't stood up from my chair except to check the blinds earlier. I hovered over the reply box, unsure why, like I needed to confront whoever was doing this. But before I typed anything, a new reply popped up. Windows open. That didn't make sense. I keep it locked because the unit is old and jams. I turned my head slowly toward it. The blinds were still down, but one of the slats was bent upward slightly, just enough to see darkness through it. I didn't remember it being like that. I got up and crossed the room, each step feeling heavier than the last. When I touched the window frame, it was cold, way colder than the apartment. The lock was still in place, but the frame felt shifted, like someone had pulled it outward and let it snap back. I checked outside. The parking lot looked deserted, just scattered streetlights and a dead moth stuck to the glass. No movement, no cars starting, no footsteps. But I couldn't shake the feeling someone had walked away seconds before I looked. Back at the desk, the thread had updated again. Another image. This time, it was my hallway, shot from very low to the ground. The carpet pattern was unmistakable. A narrow strip of light from my bathroom nightlight glowed at the far end. I hadn't taken that photo. Nobody should have been able to. The text under it made my stomach turn. Next one goes inside. No threats, no explanation, just that. And the angle of the picture, it wasn't taken by someone standing. It was lower, like the height of a child or someone crouching, too close to the floor. I grabbed my phone to call someone, but before I could unlock it, the screen lit up with a notification I didn't send to myself. Don't warn anyone. My phone wasn't even connected to the same Wi-Fi. It shouldn't have been possible. And then, another message on my monitor, a fresh post appearing at the bottom of the thread. Third part begins when you stop checking the hallway. I didn't want to look at the hallway. That made it worse, knowing the thread expected me to. I stayed frozen in my chair, staring at the monitor, waiting for another post to appear so I'd know whatever was out there hadn't moved closer. But nothing updated. The thread sat still, like it was holding its breath with me. Eventually, I forced myself to turn my head. The hallway looked the same as always. Dim, narrow, the weak bathroom nightlight casting a slanted glow across the carpet. But now that light felt staged, like it was being used by someone else to watch how I reacted. I took one step toward the doorway. The carpet under my foot felt uneven, like someone had pressed something heavy into it minutes earlier. When I reached the threshold, the air felt warmer, like someone had just been standing there. I checked each room slowly. Bathroom, closet, bedroom, all empty, nothing disturbed. I told myself it was done. Some psycho spoofing notifications, messing with my IP, maybe even breaking onto the property to take those pictures. I tried to convince myself it was just a human problem, something explainable. But when I returned to my desk, the thread had a new post waiting. No image, just text. You walked right past it. My throat tightened. I didn't move. I couldn't. The reply updated again, seconds later, without me refreshing. It likes staying low. You don't look down enough. I pushed away from the desk, my chair hitting the wall behind me. Every shadow on the floor suddenly felt too dark, too stretched. I grabbed my phone to use as a flashlight and swept it across the carpet. Halfway down the hallway, the light caught something wrong. An indentation near the baseboard, like a handprint, but not shaped right. Too long, too narrow. As if the fingers had joints where there shouldn't be any. Before I could process it, my monitor chimed. Another update, image attached. I forced myself to look. It was a still frame from inside my apartment, taken just moments earlier. The angle was from behind my chair, directly behind it. In the picture, I was standing up, leaning forward with my phone, exactly as I'd been doing seconds before. But the part that made my skin crawl wasn't me. It was what was on the floor behind my legs. A shape. Low, blurred, almost flat against the carpet. Like a person lying completely still, but twisted, their limbs bent at angles that didn't line up with anything human. The head was turned toward the camera, or whoever had taken the picture. And though the face wasn't clear, the outline of the mouth looked too wide, like it was pulled into a grin that didn't match any expression I'd ever seen. Another post appeared instantly under the image. It moved when you left the chair. You should sit back down. My heart hammered so loudly my vision pulsed. I backed into the corner of the room, keeping the whole floor in sight. I didn't blink. I didn't breathe right. I didn't dare look away. The final message came after nearly a full minute of silence on the board. If you stop watching the floor, it stops watching you. That's when it gets closer. No more posts after that. I've been sitting here ever since. Phone in one hand, monitor lighting the room, every muscle locked. I swear, I can hear something brushing lightly against the carpet just outside the doorway. Slow, dragging. I don't know how long I can keep watching the floor, but I know what happens if I don't. I used to cut through the old Harborview parking deck when walking back from night classes. Everyone at campus said to avoid it, but it shaved 10 minutes off the walk, and the place looked more pathetic than dangerous. Just a hulking concrete spiral with rusted railings and grass growing through the cracks. The city shut it down years ago after some structural inspection failed, but the chain link fences had enough gaps that people treated it like an unofficial shortcut. That Thursday, it was cold enough that every breath stung. I remember climbing the ramp to level 2, phone in hand, music low, not really thinking about anything. My sneakers echoed in that huge, empty shell, the kind of echo that makes you feel embarrassingly loud in your own skin. The place had this dead smell, wet concrete, old oil, and something like mold steeped in the dark. About halfway across the level, I heard footsteps behind me. Not echoes, not mine. They came from the entrance ramp I just walked up. Slow, uneven steps, like someone dragging one leg or wearing mismatched shoes. I turned around expecting to see another student, maybe someone trying to scare me for a TikTok. But the ramp was empty all the way down to the chain link gate. Just still air and the faint hum of the highway outside. I kept walking but picked up the pace. My footsteps slapped sharp against the concrete. The other steps did too. Same rhythm, same speed. Whoever it was had matched me perfectly. I stopped. The steps didn't. They kept going for 2 more beats, then halted abruptly somewhere near the center of the level, hidden behind a row of cracked support pillars. I could hear a faint scratch, like a shoe twisting on grit. Hello? My voice bounced upward into the darkness of the ceiling. Nothing answered. I told myself it was acoustics, maybe some weird echo delay. But then something slid across the ground a few yards ahead. A soft scrape, like someone pushing a piece of metal with their foot. I saw the object roll out from behind a pillar. A car key fob, old and faded, with a broken plastic loop. I didn't see a hand throw it. My throat tightened. I backed away toward the up-ramp that led to level 3. As I stepped onto it, a low sound rose from behind the pillars. Breathing. Harsh, unsteady breaths, too loud for the space, like someone running but trying not to move. I turned and climbed fast. My phone flashlight shook across the walls. The air changed the higher I went, colder, stiller, like the building held its breath along with me. When I reached level 3, I heard the footsteps again, this time directly below me, right under the slab, moving toward the ramp. Whoever was down there had decided to follow, and they were moving faster now. I walked deeper into level 3, hoping there was another exit I'd forgotten about, but the whole floor was just a wide rectangle of empty stalls and collapsed concrete dividers. My flashlight cut across piles of broken fluorescent tubes, a rusted fire hose cabinet hanging off its hinges, and a dark smear on the ground that looked too fresh to be oil. The footsteps below me reached the start of the ramp. I could tell by the way the sound shifted, wide, dragging strides entering the curve beneath my feet. They weren't trying to hide now. Every step landed with this damp slap that made my stomach twist. I ducked behind a support column and shut my phone light off. My breathing was too loud, so I pressed my sleeve over my mouth. The colds bit through my clothes. I could hear the person, no, not just hear them. I could feel the vibration of their steps through the concrete, like they were heavier than they should have been. They reached level 3. I saw the shadow first, stretched long across the ramp wall from the distant streetlight that bled through a crack in the outer fencing. The shadow didn't look like a man. The upper body was too broad, the head tilted at an odd angle, and one arm hung unnaturally low, almost to the ground. But when the figure stepped into the open, nothing matched the shadow. It was just a person in a heavy hoodie, hood drawn tight, hands in the pockets. Something about the posture was completely wrong, too still, too centered, like they were balancing on a point instead of standing flat. They turned their head toward my side of the deck. I didn't move, didn't breathe. I could hear their breathing now, even from across the floor, wet, dragging, almost like they were trying to suck air through a throat full of liquid. They took one step toward me. That sound, the heavy, sticky footfall, hit me like a shock. I bolted. I sprinted past the columns, weaving between old parking blocks and shattered concrete barriers. My foot slipped on something and I nearly fell, catching myself on a rusty metal railing that groaned under my weight. Behind me, I heard the person break into a run. Their footsteps were fast, too fast. The kind of speed you hear from someone chasing a bus, not someone creeping through an abandoned garage. I ran toward the far stairwell door. The one I knew was rusted shut, but it was the only solid barrier on the level. I slammed into it, rattling flakes of rust to the floor, and shoved with everything I had. The metal screamed but didn't budge. The footsteps closed in. I pressed my back against the cold steel, heart punching my ribs. The person slowed, walking now. I could hear the change in their breathing, shallower, almost patient. A silhouette appeared between the pillars, moving in short, deliberate steps. Then they stopped. They lifted something. I saw the glint before I understood it. A phone. My phone. The one I must have dropped when I slipped. Its screen lit up their hand with a cold, blue-white glow. They turned the screen toward me. It was the flashlight, full brightness. And in that beam, pointed straight at my face, I saw the outline of their hood slowly tilt, as if they were studying me. The beam hit my eyes so hard, I had to raise my arm to shield them. The figure didn't move closer. They just stood there, holding my own phone up like they were trying to see how I reacted under the light. My pulse throbbed in my skull. I forced myself to peer through my fingers, hoping the glare hid more than it revealed. Their hood slipped slightly, not enough to see a face, just enough to show a jawline that didn't match the height of the person holding it. Too low, as if the head sat deeper in the torso than it should. I pushed harder against the stairwell door. Nothing, not even a wobble. The metal felt fused to the frame. The figure lowered the phone then, slowly, almost politely, and set it on the ground between us. Screen still lit, flashlight still on. A little glowing rectangle on the concrete. Then they crooked a finger at me. Not a gesture to come closer, more like a test, a silent question. What would I do if they asked? I didn't answer. I ran. I veered right, across the center of the deck, heading for the opposite ramp, up toward level 4, the roof. I knew it was a dead end. The roof had collapsed years ago and was sealed off, but anything was better than standing in that light. Behind me, footsteps burst into motion, not running this time, sprinting. My lungs tore open with cold air. My legs shook. I swung around the curve of the ramp and felt my shoe skid on grit. I heard the person below hit the ramp wall with a dull thud, like they'd tried to turn too sharply. It didn't slow them much. Level 4 was worse than the others. No half-light from the street, no distant sound of traffic, just a vast black chamber littered with rebar and broken concrete chunks. Wind pushed through cracks in the outer walls, making low, moaning sounds that blended with my own breath. I darted behind a fallen support beam and crouched low. My heartbeat filled my ears. I waited. The steps reached the top of the ramp, but instead of coming straight in, they stopped. The person just stood at the threshold of the level, breathing with that same wet, uneven rasp. Then, one more sound. Something tapping lightly against metal. I leaned just enough to see. They were dragging a length of rebar along the wall, tapping it every few seconds like they were marking their path, testing the space, listening to the echoes. I realized then what they were doing. They were using sound to find me. I held my breath so hard my chest hurt. The tapping grew slower, more deliberate. They weren't impatient. They had time. A small stone near my foot rolled a few inches, nudged by the shifting concrete under me. The tap stopped instantly. That was all it took. The figure lunged into the dark, metal scraping as they swung the rebar against the beam I hid behind. The impact rang in my teeth. I scrambled backward, kicking against loose debris, and sprinted toward the far corner where the outer wall had crumbled into an angled slope of rubble. A gap, just wide enough for a person to slip through. I didn't think. I dove into it, scraping my arms on exposed mesh, tumbling down a short drop that emptied out into a patch of dead grass behind the structure. My hands hit dirt. Cold air flooded my lungs. I staggered to my feet and ran toward the main road, not looking back. Only when I reached a gas station 2 blocks away did I realize my phone was gone. The attendant asked if I was okay, and when I tried to explain, my voice shook so much he couldn't make sense of it. He offered to call the cops. I told him no. I didn't want to go back there. I didn't want anyone asking questions that would require me to describe what followed me. The garage is still there, condemned, fenced, abandoned. My phone never turned up. But last week, someone used its number to call me. No words, just the sound of metal tapping against concrete. I've worked at the Helmsford Logistics Warehouse in Indiana for almost 9 years. If you ask anyone local about it, they'll just say it's the giant beige box off County Road 12, the one with the faded flag and the flickering sodium lamps that make everything look jaundiced at night. People assume the turnover is bad because the work sucks. And yeah, it does. But that's not why people leave or disappear. Management never says missing. They say someone walked off mid-shift, or failed to report, or was terminated for abandonment. HR repeats those phrases like they're printed on cue cards. The thing is, you don't just walk off in the middle of a graveyard shift without someone noticing. The scanners and badge logs track everything. But sometimes, the logs get corrupted, and then nobody asks questions. I didn't notice patterns until around year 5. Always night shift. Always employees assigned to zones C or D. Always someone who worked alone at the far ends of the building, where the shelves go up 6 stories and the forklifts echo like they're screaming down metal canyons. Zone D is the worst. Half the lights don't come on unless you smack the fixtures. When they do, they buzz loud enough that your teeth ache. I avoided it unless my supervisor forced me to cover scans for whoever called out sick. The aisles are numbered, but the numbers don't make sense. You'll go down aisle 141, and somehow you'll come out near aisle 90 without ever turning.
Everyone jokes that the place was designed by a drunk, but nobody laughs long. The last person to quit without notice was a kid named Miller. 19, quiet, always wore earbuds, even when they weren't playing anything. Week before he vanished, he asked me if I ever heard someone walking above the catwalks when nobody else was scheduled. I told him it was just the HVAC settling, or rats in the ducts. He shook his head and said, no, this was heavier. 2 nights before he disappeared, he came up to me during break with this weird look, like he wasn't sure if he should even say the words. Have you ever seen someone in a vest that doesn't match shift colors? He asked. What, like an old uniform? No, like blue. We don't have blue vests. I thought he misunderstood something. We have orange, green, red, no blue. He swore he saw someone in a blue vest standing at the far end of aisle 143, watching him. He waved. The person turned the corner. When Miller followed, nobody was there. The night he went missing, he was assigned to Zone D again. The radio crackled once around 2 a.m. Not words, just a sharp breath, like someone exhaling right into the mic. Dispatch called his number 3 times. He didn't answer. They found his scanner on the floor near 143. Still warm. Screen frozen mid-scan, timestamp looping the same second over and over. Nobody searched long. Nobody filed anything real. They just hired replacements.
I wish that had been the end of it. But yesterday, something happened in Zone C, and I can't ignore it anymore. Yesterday's shift started normal, if you can call 1 a.m. in a freezing warehouse normal. I was assigned to Zone C, which is better lit but somehow feels emptier than Zone D. The shelves there hold bulky items, appliances, boxed furniture, industrial fans, stuff that blocks your peripheral vision when you walk past. Every aisle feels like it hides someone just out of sight. Around 2:40 a.m., I heard someone call my name from down aisle 127. Not over the radio, like a real voice echoing. I thought it was Ramos messing with me. He likes to shout and duck behind pallets. But when I walked over, the aisle was dead still. No carts, no footsteps, nothing. Just that humming silence the building gets when the conveyor belts cycle off. I scanned a few pallets, trying not to let my nerves chew a hole in my stomach. Then the overhead light at the far end flickered. It stayed dark longer than it should have, like something was blocking it. When it came back, I saw someone standing there. Blue vest. Not the bright warehouse colors, this was a deep navy, no reflective strips, no company logo. Just a silhouette that looked wrong. Shoulders too squared, head tilted slightly forward like they were listening. I tried calling out, "Hey, who's back there?" but my voice barely carried. The person stepped sideways out of view.
I walked toward the end of the aisle, telling myself I was being paranoid, that maybe corporate was testing new uniforms. But when I reached the intersection, the cross aisle was empty. No footsteps, no doors opening, no forklift noise. Just the cold, stale air. I radioed Ramos. "You in 127? "No, man, I'm loading 98. Why?" "Thought I saw someone." "You're in C zone. Nobody's assigned with you tonight." The way he said it made the skin on my arms prickle. I didn't respond. I kept working, but every time I bent down to scan a lower shelf, the hair on my neck pulled tight, like someone was looming just behind me. At 3:10, I heard metal shift overhead on the catwalk. Slow, deliberate steps. You can tell the difference between settling steel and actual weight. This was weight. I looked up. The catwalk should have been empty, access restricted after midnight. But I saw a shape pass between 2 grates. Not fully visible, just the blur of movement and that same blue color. Something hit the floor near me, a nut or bolt, small but heavy. It clattered across the concrete and stopped against my boot. I checked above again. Nothing.
My scanner started glitching then. The screen dimmed, brightened, dimmed again. The timestamp froze on 3:12:44 and wouldn't change no matter what I pressed. The radio hissed, soft, rhythmic, breathing. I backed toward the main walkway, keeping my eyes on the catwalk rails. Halfway down the aisle, I saw it, a hand wrapping around the railing. Pale, hanging loosely, like someone was leaning just enough to watch me leave. I didn't wait. I went straight to the supervisor's office. Johnson barely looked up from his monitor when I told him someone unauthorized was in C-Zone. He just said, "Stay on your assignments, don't escalate what you don't need to." That's the exact line they use when someone goes missing. When I got back to the floor, the bolt that hit my boot was gone, and every light in aisle 127 was dimmer than before, like the bulbs were burning out all at once. Something's wrong here. It's not just turnover. It's not just missing people. Whatever Miller saw didn't stop when he disappeared. I didn't plan to go back into C or D again, but tonight management reassigned me anyway. Short-staffed, they said, like that explained anything. They put me in Zone D. Of course they did. The moment I stepped past the threshold, the temperature dipped hard enough that my breath fogged. The heaters were on elsewhere, but not here. Never here. I kept my scanner ready, though it still glitched from last shift. Every few seconds the screen pulsed, like it was trying to sync with something I couldn't see. When it briefly unfroze, the time jumped backward. 03:11:06, over and over, the same minute repeating. I started down aisle 143. That was where they found Miller's scanner. The overheads flickered in a slow wave, one by one, as if something was moving ahead of me, triggering the motion sensors early.
About halfway through the aisle, radio static spiked. Not breathing this time, something else. A low, dragging scrape, steady, metallic. I pressed the transmit button. "Dispatch, I'm in 143, hearing something above the racks. Do we have maintenance scheduled?" Dispatch crackled back with a flat, rehearsed line. "Stay on your assignments." Then silence. At the far end of the aisle, I saw movement. Not a full figure, just part of someone's shoulder as they turned into the next row. Blue vest, same deep navy, same unnatural stillness, like the person wasn't walking so much as being placed there. I followed, keeping distance. The cross aisle was empty again, but something caught my eye on the floor. Drag marks. 2 parallel lines in the dust, as if something heavy had been pulled across the concrete not long ago. My stomach tightened. They led toward a service door that employees aren't supposed to use, the kind that needs a supervisor badge. But when I reached it, it was slightly open, just a few inches. Cold air leaked out. Inside was a narrow corridor running behind the racks. No lights, just the soft hum of electricity and a smell like wet metal. About 20 feet in, I saw a vest on the floor. Orange, one of ours, Miller's size. I crouched to pick it up and heard footsteps behind me, slow, measured, heavy. The sound of someone who wasn't trying to hide at all. I stepped backward into the corridor, pressing myself against the wall. The footsteps stopped at the threshold. For a second, it was quiet enough that I could hear my own pulse echo in my ears. Then a figure leaned in, blue vest, shoulders filling the doorway, head bent just too low, like the spine wasn't quite right. No face I could make out, just darkness where features should have been. But I could tell it was looking at me. My radio cracked again, not static, a voice. Not Miller's, not anyone I've worked with. A man's voice, close and low, speaking right into the mic even though I wasn't touching it. "You shouldn't be here." The figure in the doorway tilted its head at the exact same moment the voice spoke, like both actions were synced. I bolted deeper into the corridor. The scanner flashed nonsense symbols, timestamps spiraling backward. The air grew colder the farther I ran. The corridor eventually opened into a storage bay I'd never seen on any map. Empty except for lines on the floor where pallets had once been, and more drag marks. My radio spoke again, same voice, same wrong tone. "Stay on your assignments." Behind me, footsteps entered the room. I turned. There were more than one now. 3 shapes in blue vests standing between me and the exit. Perfectly still, perfectly spaced, like they'd been arranged. I backed up until my shoulders hit the wall. My scanner flickered one last time and froze on an ID it shouldn't have displayed. Employee active, Miller D. Location, present. The blue shapes stepped forward in unison. That's when I understood why nobody files reports. Why nobody searches long. Why HR phrases everything the same way. People don't disappear here. They stay. They just stop being employees. And now that I've seen them,
Now that they've seen me, I know exactly what the next announcement over the radio will say. Failure to report, termination for abandonment. But I never left this building, and I won't.
You've reached the end of tonight's dive into the dark side of the web. This was LurmoStories, and if any of these posts felt too real, wait until the next time your phone lights up in the dark.